All right, everyone, welcome back. You ready to dive deep again? This time, we're tackling a genealogy.
Oh, genealogy sounds thrilling.
I know. But trust me, this one's a doozy. We're talking Genesis 36, the family tree of, you guessed it, Esau.
Jacob's twin brother, Mr. Birthright for a bowl of stew.
The one and only. But this chapter, this is like Esau, uncut and unfiltered. Family drama, power struggles, maybe even some ancient real estate envy mixed in.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Esau usually plays second fiddle to Jacob. What makes his story so special?
It's a total perspective shift. We're used to Jacob's line, right? Leading up to Israel. But Esau, his descendants, the Edomites, they blaze their own trail. And it all starts with this, let's be honest, kind of juicy family tree.
Juicy. Okay, I'm in. Lay it on me.
First up, the wives. Esau had 3. Ada the Hittite, Aholibama the Hivite, and Basemath. She was Ishmael's daughter, by the way.
Whoa, hold up. 3 wives from different groups. Was that normal back then? Seems like a recipe for, well, tension.
Right. Especially given the whole Jacob-Esau rivalry thing. I mean, come on, marrying into different tribes. Got to be some family drama there.
It's a fantastic question, though. Marrying outside your own tribe wasn't completely unheard of. But it definitely adds layers. We have to think about those cultural influences. Hittites, Hivites. Those weren't just names. They represented different worlds, different beliefs, traditions, even political alliances. How did all that shape Edomite identity? I mean, did those early choices influence their interactions with the Israelites later on? It makes you wonder.
So from the get-go, we see Esau's not just some wandering nomad. He's building a family, a network, bridging different worlds. And of course, that family, it grows. Each wife has a bunch of sons. And those sons, their names become the foundation of entire Edomite clans.
Makes sense. This is a time when lineage meant everything. Your name, especially for sons, it carried your destiny. Power, status, it all went through the family line. So these names, Eliphaz, Reuel, Jush, they weren't just labels, they were legacies in the making.
Okay, so we got the sons, each a branch of this growing family tree. But then, bam, the text throws us a curveball. These figures, they're called chiefs. And I gotta ask, are we talking warlords here? Tribal leaders? What kind of authority did these chiefs have in Edomite society?
Think of them as power players, leaders within specific clans or regions. The text is a bit vague, but we can assume they commanded respect, maybe even controlled resources. And you'll notice some names pop up across generations, like Teman, Korah.
Oh, interesting. So it wasn't just being a direct descendant of Esau. It was about those specific lines holding on to power. It was like dynasty building, ancient style, right? But hold on, isn't there something unique about one of these chiefs?
You're thinking of Timnah, right? She stands out, that's for sure. She's described as a concubine, but she becomes a chief. You don't see that every day, especially in a society where men held most of the power.
I bet that raised some eyebrows among the Edomite elite. I mean, was this a sign of, like, changing social norms? Or was Timnah just this exceptional individual who defied expectations? It makes you wonder what roles women could play, even in a world dominated by men.
Absolutely. It challenges our assumptions, forces us to ask questions. Maybe there were other powerful women working behind the scenes, or maybe Timnah's lineage played a role in her rise, like peeking into a hidden history, you know? A story waiting to be uncovered.
And just when you think we've got this family tree figured out, boom, we meet another group, the Horites, described as the original inhabitants of Seir, the land Esau settles in. Talk about a plot twist.
Right. Now we have to ask, how did the Edomites and the Horites interact? Did they conquer them, live alongside them, intermarry?
It's like a historical mystery with only a few clues. We get this list of Horite clans, their chiefs, but no epic battles or peace treaties. Did the Edomites absorb Horite culture? Was there tension bubbling beneath the surface? It's fascinating. And speaking of bubbling, there's this intriguing little story about Anna, one of the Horites, who discovers water in the wilderness.
That's not just some random detail. Water is everything in that environment. Controlling water meant controlling trade routes, grazing land, maybe even political power.
So we've got this tangled web of family ties, chiefs emerging, the mysterious Horites, and the potential for conflict over resources. It's a lot to unpack, and guess what? It gets even more interesting. We're about to uncover a whole new layer of Edomite history, a layer that might just blow your mind.
Oh, do tell.
Well, let's just say we're about to enter a world of kings. Kings who ruled in Edom before Israel even had a king.
Kings? Before Israel? Wait, I thought Saul was the first king in that region? This changes everything.
I know, right? It's a total game changer. We need a minute to process this. When we come back, we're diving headfirst into this unexpected chapter of Edomite history, the era of kings before Israel. All right, I'm still wrapping my head around this whole kings before Israel thing. It's like, whoa, history just got a whole lot more interesting.
Right. It's one of those details that just makes you rethink everything you thought you knew.
So spill the beans. Who were these Edomite kings? What were they like?
Well, their names might sound a bit unfamiliar. Bela, Jobab, Husham. But each one represents a whole chapter of history that often gets overlooked.
So we're not talking about like small-time tribal leaders here. These were
Right.
legit kings, right? Palaces, armies, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They ruled over a territory, commanded resources. They probably had some pretty intense dealings with their neighbors, too. Diplomacy, warfare. It suggests that Edom was a major player in the ancient Near East, long before Israel stepped onto the scene.
It really makes you wonder about their relationship with Jacob's descendants during this time. Were they rivals, allies? Maybe they were doing some ancient trading. Did those early Edomite kings, did they set the stage for the later conflicts we see between Edom and Israel? So many questions.
It's like a puzzle, and we only have a few pieces, but that's part of what makes this so fascinating. We get these intriguing glimpses into their world. A king named Hadad, he attacked Midian. Another one, Hadar, he had a wife from a powerful Mesopotamian family. It opens up all these possibilities, these connections, conflicts. It's amazing to think about.
I feel like we're uncovering a lost civilization here. Each name, each little detail, it's a clue to a much bigger story. It really shows how the biblical narrative is just one perspective on a much more complex history.
Right, there's so much we don't know, so many stories waiting to be discovered. It keeps us humble.
Okay, so we've got these Edomite kings ruling their kingdom, but then the genealogy, it kind of circles back to those chiefs we talked about earlier, like a recap, emphasizing those lineages that continue to have power in Edom. But I'm sensing a twist here, am I right?
You're sharp. This final list of chiefs, it's not exactly the same as the one before. Some names are gone, new ones appear. What does that tell us? Power in Edom wasn't static. Things were shifting. There were probably power struggles going on behind the scenes.
Ooh, palace intrigue. So even within this structure of chiefs and kings, there was constant change, ambition, maybe even some backstabbing. This is giving me some serious Game of Thrones vibes, ancient Near East edition. What do you think caused these power shifts? Was it economic changes, rivalries between different families, pressure from outside forces?
Those are all great questions. Unfortunately, Genesis 36 isn't exactly a tell-all book when it comes to palace gossip, but it does give us a framework for understanding Edomite society. Lineage was key. Chiefs held influence within their clans. Kings ruled over the whole territory. And within that structure, there was this dynamic flow of power, a constant negotiation of who was on top.
It reminds us that even in the ancient world, things weren't black and white. There were shades of gray, complexities we can only imagine. It's not just a list of names, it's a snapshot of a society in motion. We've gone from Esau, the individual, to his massive family, the rise of those chiefs, and now this whole thing with kings. What does all this mean for how we understand the Edomites as a people?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think the main takeaway here is that the Edomites were way more than just Esau's descendants. They were a complex society with their own internal dynamics, their own goals, their own struggles for power.
They weren't just some footnote in Israel's story. They were a force to be reckoned with. And understanding their structure, their leadership, their history, it gives us a much richer context for understanding how they interacted with the Israelites.
Definitely. It's not just a simple story of sibling rivalry playing out on a national scale. We're talking about two nations, each one with its own internal complexities. They're all competing for resources, for land, for dominance in this really volatile region.
It's wild, isn't it? How much we've uncovered just from this one chapter, Genesis 36, started with a simple list of names. And now, we've got a whole new view of the Edomites, their history, their place in, well, the whole biblical world.
It's easy to get lost in the weeds, though. A quick recap might help.
Right. So we started with Esau, good old Jacob's twin brother. Learned about his 3 wives, Adah, Aholibama, and Basemath. And their different backgrounds, it kind of hints that cultural mixing was already a thing in Esau's world.
It's true, yeah. And then those wives, they have sons. And those sons, they become like the heads of these powerful Edomite clans. Shows you how much lineage, family ties, how much it all mattered back then.
Absolutely. But then things get really interesting when we hit those chiefs, right? They weren't just Esau's descendants. It was about certain families, specific lineages holding onto power.
Like some ancient dynasty in the making. Some families rising, some fading. And then you've got Timnah, female chief. Talk about a woman who breaks the mold. Really makes you question what roles women could play, even in those ancient societies.
Timnah's story is such a good reminder. Don't put the past in a box, right? There's always something more to find, more nuance, if you just look closely enough.
Exactly. And speaking of things we found, remember those Horites, the OG inhabitants of the land Esau ends up in?
Oh yeah, how could we forget?
They bring up so many questions like how did the Edomites and Horites actually get along? Peace, conflict, did they swap cultures? The text, it doesn't give us all the answers, but there's definitely more to the story than meets the eye.
It's like this hidden layer, right? Waiting for someone to dig it up. And of course, then there's that bombshell. Edomite kings, ruling before Israel even had a king.
Talk about turning history on its head.
Right. Makes you realize the Bible is just one side of a much bigger, more complex story. And the Edomites, they weren't just Esau's descendants or Israel's rivals. They were their own people, with their own goals, their own struggles, their own part to play in ancient history.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And by understanding them, their society, their leadership, their past, we understand their relationship with the Israelites so much better.
It's not just good guys, bad guys anymore. It's about, like, why did each group do what they did? What were the power struggles? How did conflict AD cooperation shape everything back then?
That's the key. It was complicated. So for our listeners out there dying to know more, where should they go? What resources would you recommend?
Well, first off, there are some awesome commentaries on Genesis. They really dig deep into this chapter. And you can find books just on Edomite history, archaeology, culture, the whole shebang. Online search is your friend.
Oh, and don't forget museums, archaeological sites. Seeing those artifacts in person, it's like, bam! You're connected to those ancient stories in a whole new way.
You realize it's not just names on a page. These were real people, living their lives, building societies. They left their mark.
And their story, it's still being written. Archaeologists are making new discoveries all the time. Historians are always looking at the evidence in new ways.
Shows that history's never really done. We're always discovering, reinterpreting, Our understanding of the past is always growing. And who knows what we'll learn next about the Edomites.
The beauty of it, right? Always more to learn, to uncover. It's what makes these deep dives so much fun.
We definitely took a deep dive into Genesis 36 today. And honestly, it's been eye-opening. A genealogy full of drama, secrets, and historical importance. Who knew?
Goes to show you, ancient texts, they've got this power. They spark our curiosity, make us question everything.
So to all our deep divers listening, keep exploring. Keep asking those questions. Keep digging into the world of the Bible and that whole ancient world that opens up. There's a whole universe of knowledge out there waiting for you. And until next time, keep those minds curious and those deep diving spirits alive.